My mother, brother, and I stayed together, but we were separated from my father. We never saw him again.
Welcome. I'm very grateful they've all taken the time to join us for the Holocaust Memorial event today to remember those who were murdered because of who they were. The ceremony will last for approximately 60 minutes and will feature the experiences of people who survived the Holocaust and genocide. We hope you'll find the event moving, informative, and engaging, and that will inspire you to take action for a safer future. In terms of housekeeping, this event is taking place live, so fingers crossed, and the films can't be paused, so all attendees have been placed on mute, but feel free to use the chat function. I'm very grateful to our partners, Dartford Borough Council, for working with us on this event, and also other funding partners, including Arts Council England, Cohesion Borough Council, and Kent County Council, who allow us, with the funding they give, to allow us to deliver the work that we do. Friends and colleagues, thank you for joining us to mark Holocaust Memorial Day. Your attendance is part of the national picture of Holocaust Memorial Day, with thousands of activities taking place across the UK, supported by the Holocaust Memorial Day Trust. It's important that we come together to remember all those affected by genocide around the world, so we do not make these mistakes in the future. Holocaust Memorial Day takes place on the 27th of January each year to remember the 6 million Jews murdered during the Holocaust, alongside the millions of other people killed under Nazi persecution, including hundreds of thousands of Roma gypsies, homosexuals, people with disability and mental health issues living in institutions. Unfortunately, as a human race, we do not appear to have learned from this atrocity, as there have been subsequent genocides in Cambodia, Darfur, Rwanda, Bosnia, and Myanmar. 2021 also marks the 26th anniversary of the genocide in Bosnia, here in the heart of Europe, in our own lifetime, where over 8,000 Bosnian Muslim men were murdered, and another 30,000 Bosnian women, children, and elderly people from Muslim heritage background were asked to move just because of who they were. We meet today in a very challenging period in the history of our country, with many of us experiencing uncertainty, fear, and grief as a result of the ongoing pandemic. Increasing levels of denial, division, and misinformation in today's world mean we must remain vigilant against hatred and identity-based hostility. The theme for Holocaust Memorial Day this year is to be the light in the darkness, and it encourages everyone to reflect on the depths humanity can sink to, but also the way individuals and communities resisted the darkness to be the light before, during, and after the genocide. Be the light in the darkness is an affirmation and a call to action for everyone marking Holocaust Memorial Day. We can all stand in solidarity. We can all choose to be the light in the darkness. I've always been proud of the positive community relations that we enjoy here in Kent overall, but nonetheless, we can't be complacent. In the last quarter, for example, 65% of all reported hate crimes across Kent were around race and ethnicity. That is some 650 reports. I'm grateful for the excellent work Kent Police do in this area, but it's not just their job. In order to combat hate in our communities, we all have a crucial role to play in what is seen as acceptable language and behaviour. The whole ethos of our work and our partnership with Dartford Borough Council and local community and faith organisations is for us to all to come together and celebrate all that binds us together rather than what divides us. It's only by standing together we can tackle these agendas and different viewpoints. It's only by sticking together and standing shoulder to shoulder that we can continue to enjoy positive community relations here in Kent. Now I've got great pleasure in introducing a great supporter of our work and a great friend and advocate when it comes to equality, diversity and inclusion here in Kent, the leader of Dartford Borough Council, Councillor Jeremy Kite.
Hello there, and welcome to our second annual Holocaust Memorial Day here in Dartford. This year, of course, we're doing it online because of the COVID restrictions, but I hope nevertheless it's a very moving occasion. Holocaust Memorial Day is a hugely important day in our calendar, and it's a hugely important one for all of our communities. It's not about one faith or another, it's about everybody. It's about understanding the impact of intolerance, of hatred, and of the way we behave towards each other. I think it's a very valuable thing for us to be doing, and I'm very pleased that Dartford Borough Council, working with Cohesion Plus, are able to put on events such as this today. I hope it's very meaningful for you and a moving occasion.
And now I'd like to introduce Gerald Rose, who's the senior warden at Catford and Bromley United Synagogue, and again who's provided a lot of help and support to us in the build-up to this event.
As you heard, the 2001 HMD theme is Be the Light in the Darkness. Who is it that will continue to be the light into the future? It will be the children who still have the chance to hear first-hand testimony from survivors. And that is why Holocaust education is so important, and why the minister of the Catford and Bromley Synagogue, Reverend Cantor David Rome, wanted to include something from children. As we are having to use the recorded pieces, Reverend Rome has selected a recording of the song Oseh Shalom, performed by him with children from 8 Jewish primary schools, as well as 3 male choirs, and cantor Adrian Alexander, from a Yom HaShoah event in 2016. Yom HaShoah, why Oseh Shalom? Jews greet and part from others with Shalom, Arabs with Salam. Both mean peace. Peace for all is what we want from the light in the darkness. The song you are about to hear, Oseh Shalom, means he who makes peace. And the full translation is, he who makes peace in his high places, he shall make peace upon us and upon all of Israel. And let us say, Amen. We say this for all mankind and recognize that the Holocaust saw the extermination of probably over 17 million souls from many communities, not just 6 million Jews, of which 1.5 million were children. So I introduce Reverend Rome singing For Peace for All.
Oseh Shalom bimromav, Hu Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al Kol Yisrael, Ve'al Kol Yisrael, Ve'imaru, Amen. Oseh Shalom bimromav, Hu Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al Kol Yisrael, Ve'al Kol Yisrael, Ve'imaru, Amen. יעשה שלום, שלום במרומיו. הוא יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ועל כל ישראל, ויאמרו, אמן. עושה שלום, שלום במרומיו. הוא יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ועל כל ישראל, יאמרו, אמן. הוא יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ועל כל ישראל, ויאמרו,
And now I'd like to introduce Rabbi Matti Kirschenbaum, who is the rabbi for the Bromley Reform Synagogue.
It's an honor to be invited to speak today. Jews commemorate our dead by saying a prayer, Kaddish, that does not mention death, but instead praises God. This reflects our hope in the better future, where the faith in God and the values that God represents unites us and helps us build a better tomorrow. In this hope, I will say now the words of Kaddish. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, בלמה דברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומייכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בגלה ובזמן קריב, ואמרו אמן. יחשמי רבה מברך לעולם ולעלמי עלמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמי די קודשה בריחו, לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, די אמירן בעלמה, ואמרו אמן. יהשלמה רבה מן שמיה, וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום, עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ועל כל בני אדם, ואמרו amen. Now, I'd like to continue with the prayer that commemorates all the victims of the Holocaust and persecution during the Second World War and throughout history. For the 6 million and for all who died in the Shoah, Avinu Malkeinu, our heavenly parent, let there be perfect rest for the souls of the 6 million who died as Jews in the flames of the Shoah. Let there be perfect rest for the countless millions who died because of race, religion or nationality, political affiliation, or sexual orientation. Hold them close to you forever. Seal their souls for everlasting life in the shelter of your presence, for you are the eternal home. Together we say, Amen. I would like to introduce a moving poem by Barbara Sonek that tells us about the horrors of the Holocaust, about the horrors of young lives lost. This poem resonates with me in particular because one of such lives was my father's cousin, who was only one when she died, deported to the East. I can't help but wonder how different our family life could have been. What could she have had achieved? We'll never know the answer to such questions. What we can do is to prevent such terrible fates from ever happening again.
I'd like to read you a poem called Holocaust by Barbara Sonek, a modern American poet. We played, we laughed, we were loved. We were ripped from the arms of our parents and thrown into the fire. We were nothing more than children. We had a future. We were going to be lawyers, rabbis, wives, teachers, mothers. We had dreams. Then we had no hope. We were taken away in the dead of night like cattle in cars. No air to breathe, smothering, crying, starving, dying. Separated from the world, to be no more. From the ashes, hear our plea. This atrocity to mankind cannot happen again. Remember us, for we were the children whose dreams and lives were stolen away.
Now I'd like to introduce two of our key partners. First of all, the leader of Kent County Council, Councillor Roger Goff, and he'll be followed by the Deputy Chief Constable for Kent Police, Tony Blaker.
Thank you, Govinda. I'm very pleased indeed and very honoured to be asked to take part in this Holocaust Memorial Day and to speak representing the County Council. The practice of Holocaust Memorial Day is part of ensuring that what happened in the Holocaust remains part of our collective memory and helps us to guard against repetition. It is also, I think, right that through this we remember, as indeed we just heard a moment ago from Rabbi Kirschbaum, about the individuals, those who died in the course of this. For anyone who follows, who is on Twitter, I would recommend that you can, the Auschwitz Memorial has an account which is well worth following. Each day it presents an individual, sometimes more than one individual, of someone who was in Auschwitz, most of whom died there. It's usually presented on perhaps their birthday. And it is often quite hard to take because it shows people at every stage in life, from children, babies even, through to those who might have hoped and expected a good and dignified old age. But what it does do is it makes those people, their experiences, very real and very direct to us who come some time afterwards. Of course, Auschwitz was not the sum total of the Holocaust. Sobibor, Treblinka, Belzec, the massacres carried out by the Einsatzgruppen and much else. But it nonetheless, this I think achieves something in conveying to all of us what it was that these were individuals whose lives were snuffed out and to whom we owe a duty in terms of memory. We speak also about not repeating what has happened, but it's worth remembering that this day is also to commemorate subsequent genocides. Govinda mentioned both Rwanda and the atrocities in the former Yugoslavia, particularly in Bosnia. And indeed, there are others to remember too, whether it's Darfur, Cambodia, and other such horrors. And we have seen in recent times, if we reflect on what we've seen in politics across the Western world, we have seen once more racial tension, mobilization, and indeed anti-Semitism in a way that perhaps some years ago we would have not imagined would be possible. Nonetheless, the other part of what we are here to do, which is to ensure that it becomes part of our collective memory, is something that I think grows with each year, and it is wonderful in particular to see young people engaged in this so that this memory and this practice continues. So I would also like, in concluding, to thank the Equality Govinda and the Equality Cohesion Council, both for organising this event today and for all the work that they do to ensure that we as a county have an equitable and cohesive and united community, which now we need more than ever as we come through, and I trust soon come out of, the crisis of the COVID epidemic. Thank you again for organising this today. Thank you for inviting me to take part.
Hello, my name is Tony Blaker and I'm the Deputy Chief Constable of Kent Police, and I lead for diversity and inclusion. Be the light in the darkness is the theme for this year's Holocaust Memorial Day, which I am proud to support as we remember those that lost their lives through hatred and persecution. The Holocaust Memorial Trust have highlighted that we regularly hear denial, untruth and attempts to create division on social media and the wider internet. So we must all remain vigilant to such hatred and identity-based hostility. With developments in technology, the political climate and world events beyond our control, people could be feeling helpless in this situation. These unprecedented times that we are currently living in are showing the very best of which humanity is capable of. We have seen examples of kindness, generosity of spirit and sense of community. However, in some of the abuse and conspiracy theories being spread on social media, the much darker side of our world is shown. We must all be a light in these times, together united and as one community. In the lead up to genocide, distortions of facts deployed using propaganda and stereotyping to identify and victimise specific groups. These are followed by discrimination, often enshrined into law. Daily we encounter words of hate and harm, and it's for the police service to challenge this, ensuring that it does not escalate into actions of hatred and violence that we've seen throughout history. From the words of the SS in Germany used to entice violence against communities, to the proclamations in Sudan urging violence and purges on the people of Darfur, we have learned that people in authority need to speak up and counter this narrative to be the light in people's darkness. History has shown police and authorities have stood by idle, keeping quiet without speaking out, or they've actively used words to enable genocide. In policing here in Kent, we can speak up to keep the peace, to protect and prevent hate from taking hold. Sometimes it's the smallest of choices, actions or words that provide light in dark places. Survivors of genocide emphasise that any kindness, when surrounded by suffering, indifference and persecution, is powerful. It is a light in a dark place. So I close with a quote from a Holocaust survivor, Gina Turgel, MBE, who said, "We will continue to do our bit for as long as we can, securing the knowledge that others will continue to light a candle long after us." Gina passed away in 2018, but rest assured, Kent Police will continue to do our bit so others are able to light a candle.
And now we're going to have 3 short videos with some personal reflections from members from the local community here in Gresham in Dartford around their visits to the concentration camps, their connections to some of the liberation that took place at the concentration camps, and why it's important, locally here in Kent, that we continue to commemorate Holocaust Memorial Day.
Quite a few years ago, I went to the Imperial War Museum in London, and they had a specific event on about the Holocaust, which made me at that point want to go to Krakow in Poland to visit Auschwitz and Birkenau. When I was about 12, I went to the borders of Germany and France with my parents, and we went into a museum there that used to be a concentration camp. And I can still remember now the feeling of just great sadness at what had happened. So I wanted to go back to a similar place as an adult. Krakow itself is a lovely city, and we had a great break. But the day that we went to Auschwitz and Birkenau was just incredibly sad. We were there a few years ago when the Beast from the East was in the UK. So the daytime temperatures were -15. So we were standing in all of our winter gear, hats, gloves, scarf, and we're still cold, thinking about the people there in clogs and thin pajamas at that time of year. A lot of the exhibits there are, for me, too raw to even take photos of. You were able to in most places, but I didn't think it was appropriate. But even the photos of the iconic railway line going into Birkenau and standing on the spot where people were getting off the train and being sent left or right as to whether they were going to go to the workhouse or the gas chamber. It was very, very emotional. I can feel getting emotional now speaking about it. One particular exhibit made me very emotional, which was they have rooms where they have suitcases with the names and dates of birth on of the owners who thought they were going to get them back because they were told that you'll go into a better life. They had piles of spectacles, hair where they'd shaved people's heads. But the one that got me was a room that was just full of prosthetic limbs. So wooden and metal arms and legs. And it just made me think, I don't know anyone in my life that's got a prosthetic. So for there to be that many, it brought home the millions of people that died just in that one camp. There's very few people now, survivors, that would have actually been through it firsthand. And we need to pass it down the generations. I'd like my grandchildren to know what happened so we can learn for the future and we don't let something like that happen again.
My very good friend Stephanie and I have always wanted to go to Auschwitz, but we always seem to find some excuse or reason not to. We were too busy or something cropped up. But then I read a piece in a newspaper about the Polish government and the struggles they were having with maintaining the camp and keeping it open for visitors. And of course, that tells a story in itself, because Auschwitz was not designed to be a long-lasting facility. It wasn't built well. It was designed to be a very cynical and very straightforward killing house with a very simple purpose. It was part of a final solution and wasn't intended to last very long at all. So we went. And of course, when you get there, you're very familiar with Auschwitz from film and television and books. You think you know it. But there's no way to describe that feeling when you go through the main doors to the camp and then you come across that first infamous gate. And you go through it, and there were lots of people there, lots of visitors that day we went. But interestingly, within a few moments, it was as if everybody was visiting on their own. The whole mood changed once you're in the camp, and it became very somber and very personal, I think. And yes, you're very familiar with many aspects of the camp because, again, you've seen them on television and film. You're familiar with the display cases that are full of suitcases, full of spectacles and full of human hair. And nothing can quite prepare you for when you see them, but you are at least aware of their existence and you knew about them. But for me, one of the most extraordinary things was the way I was struck by the sheer ordinariness of the place. And when I was walking around, it might have just been a personal reflection, but for me, it was those ordinary things that I found most moving. It was the fences and the fence posts. It was the doors and the hinges even. It was the cracked flooring. It was the windows. And as you're walking around, you can't help but realize that, of course, for millions of people undergoing the most extraordinary torments, this was what they were seeing every single day. And for a huge number of them, of course, this was the last thing they were to see. There's a block, I think it's block 11, which is a sheer grotesque parody of a court. There's a room where they used to hold kangaroo courts. And it's so cynically designed because there's no real justice there. And yet when you come out of this courtroom, there's a short corridor that leads you to a waiting room. And then there's another short corridor that leads you straight out into a yard where there is an execution wall. And the execution takes place within seconds. There's no justice, there's no rationale, there's no reason. It's just pure, simple genocide. And it's very, very difficult for anyone with any kind of sense of civility to really get their head around what they're seeing. But a visit there is extraordinary. I'm very pleased that we went, but I must be honest and say, I probably wouldn't want to go again. It's one of those things that just had this extraordinary effect on you. And it's good to have that reminder of man's inhumanity and the capacity we have for evil. But it is a horrible thing to see. And as I was leaving, I was kind of reminded of a quote that my mum, I think, told me, which was that humans are the only species on earth to believe in a God, and yet we're the only species on earth to behave as if there isn't one. And I reflect on that because when you see examples today of intolerance or of hatred or a sheer lack of understanding of other people's faith, belief, or lifestyles even, it makes you wince because you can see where, of course, this ends up. And anyone with any sense of civility, I think, will feel that way. And I think that's why it's very important to have days like today as a reminder of the things we are capable of. As a race, we're capable of extraordinary things as a species, but we're also capable of extraordinary hurt and horror and hatred. And that side of ourselves, we have to constantly battle. There's a sign when you're there at Auschwitz, which talks about why you have to remember the past if you're going to make any sense at all of the future. And I think that's probably would sum it up for me. It's a trip that I was very pleased I made, but I probably wouldn't want to make again. It changed me a little bit, and it makes you always remember what you saw and what you heard there. And I think when I left, finally, there's a little bit of you that's obviously very depressed and upset at the way humans can be. But there's also part of you that makes you realise we've moved on, and that if we keep meeting the challenge and keep beavering away and just be kind to people and just be understanding, there's great hope for us. And even though this year has been tough, once again, what's shone through is the tolerance, the kindness, and the helping hands we've given to people, which is the very antithesis of what I saw at Auschwitz. Days like today are a hugely important point for us to remember. And I'm very, very pleased that we do this in Dartford. And I hope that my simple account of a trip to Auschwitz has been useful and fed into that day.
Hi there, my name's Tim Harris. I'm here today to talk about my father, John William Harris, who was involved in the liberation of the Sandbostel concentration camp in Germany in 1945. In 1943, he joined the regular army. He actually enlisted at Maidstone, and he was then posted to the Manchester Regiment and trained until right the way up until 1944, when he was sent over to Normandy about 2 weeks after the initial invasion. And at some point, he changed from Manchester Regiment to the Royal Northumberland Fusiliers. Just prior to the war's end, they were working their way up through West Germany. They were approached by two escaped prisoners of war who were in quite poor condition. And they spoke of the camp that they had come from, the prisoner of war camp, which was Stalag XB at a place called Sandbostel in Germany. First soldiers that actually approached the camp spoke of, before they could see it, that they could smell it, and they could smell it from several miles away. The camp itself was situated in the middle of a heathland with very little around in the surrounding country. It was an ideal place for them to hide such a camp. And when they got there, they found horrendous conditions. My father's experience within the camp, he was brought forward to help clear the camp after the initial finding of it as such. And his role and with his colleagues was that of clearing out particularly the bodies from the camp. Although the outside of the camp was grim, and he described in letters to my mum seeing whipping posts and hanging posts, it was when they got within the huts, of which he described as there were many, that they saw the real atrocities. And what they found was that there were multiple layers of beds, and the beds, and not really a description of them, but they were made up of 3 planks and divided into 18 beds. So there were 3 layers of 6 beds. Underneath that was floorboards, and he describes that underneath those floorboards was effectively a cesspit, which was full of human waste, and also numerous bodies that had been pushed under the floorboards and either perished there or been pushed under there when they'd perished. So he was involved in clearing the bodies. Now, after the war, and I've used in a term to you previously that my father was one of the hidden victims of concentration camps, and I think he was probably one of thousands of both soldiers and civilians that were involved in those camps. And we tend to remember those that died at the camps and the survivors who were actually prisoners. But other people that were involved in both clearing and freeing those prisoners had a huge impact on the rest of their life. My father, in the way it affected him, is that mentally he suffered, I think, as I've already said, post-traumatic stress disorder. Not that it was recognised then, and he never had any treatment for it. And as with most people in the UK at that time, he had the stiff upper lip and just carried on and probably never realised there was anything wrong with him. But it manifested itself in nightmares, panic attacks. He would have periods where he could not face people and he would lock himself away in a room. He'd become very unapproachable, short-tempered, all the signs of post-traumatic stress disorder. But at that time, mental health wasn't really accepted, and certainly there was no support or treatment for it. If we do not remember what happened in the past, we will repeat it. And there are still people out there are still countries where there are the potential for there to be a repeat of the Holocaust. Unless we understand what happened and we try and prevent it, it will repeat itself.
Some powerful kind of testimonies there by members from the local community. And I think it's also what we will be doing after this event. We will be creating a link. We're recording the event. So the idea is obviously we'll share it out, and we're more than happy to share it with yourselves. And, if we can get this message out, and, there's a lot of mention being made of young people, children, if there's ways we can get the messages out from Holocaust Memorial Day, that it's just so important that, young people can carry this message forward. Now we're going to introduce a short film. This is about the experience of the last Roma survivor living in the UK, Joseph Sadowski. And it's a short film just talking about what he, unfortunately, and his family had to go through.
Nazywam się Józef Sadowski. Urodzony jestem 10 kwiecień 1944. Przebywałem w tym getcie w obozie, która była dzielnica Warszawy wydzielona dla Żydów i dla Romów.
When Yusuf was a baby, his father contacted couriers who were illegally smuggling things in and out of the ghetto.
Jak mnie te kuriery mieli wykraść z tego getta, to jeszcze ojciec w tym getcie żył i matka. I oni ich przekupili i dali im namiary, gdzie mniej więcej przebywają, gdzie ich szukać, żeby mnie dostarczyli do tych rodzin romskich.
Yusuf was successfully smuggled out of the ghetto and taken to a Roma community. He lived with them mostly in the forest for the rest of his childhood. He later found out he was the only one in his family to survive. His mother, father, and 3 siblings were all killed by the Nazis.
Po wojnie to się dowiedziałem, że tak, ojca wysłali do Stutthofu pod Gdańskiem do obozu, tam zginął, matka została spalona zresztą z dziećmi, a ja zostałem jakoś dzięki Bogu ocalony przez tych kurierów.
The Nazis believed in an ideal of a pure Aryan race of Germans and targeted anyone they believed threatened this ideology. They were heavily influenced by ideas about eugenics and racial purity and used this to justify hatred, persecution, and discrimination across Nazi-occupied Europe. Jews, Roma and Sinti, disabled and black people were targeted for these reasons. Other groups were targeted by the Nazis for other reasons. Roma people were forcibly taken to concentration camps, including the infamous Gypsy camp at Auschwitz-Birkenau. Those who escaped this fate were murdered by soldiers in the woods, who shot them and buried them in mass graves. But the persecution of the Roma people didn't end with the war. Józef and his community still faced persecution.
Natomiast takie słowa mi weszły w uszy, że do tej pory to słyszę, tak jakbym to miał gdzieś to zakodowane. Pierwsze słowo to było Zigeuner, Schweine, Zigeuner. Te 2 słowa. To pamiętam i z tymi słowami ja umrę.
The Polish language has only recently adopted the word Roma.
Kiedyś to nie nazywali na nas Romowie, tylko mówili Cygani. Cygan. A Cygan to świadczyło to po polsku, że to kłamca, że to oszust, że to złodziej, że to ostatni gatunek człowieka. To był Cygan.
Roma people in the UK still face discrimination and prejudice, far more than most other communities. That is why it is important to learn about stories like these, learning lessons from the past and remembering the victims.
Niektóre państwa to jak słyszą te opowiadania, czy słyszą tą rozmowę, to myślę, że to jakaś bajka, że to nieprawda. A to jednak była prawda. Były takie sytuacje, że jeszcze gorsze, jak moje przeżycie. Ale te ludzie już nie żyją. To są jednostki tak jak ja jestem. Natomiast to, co ja opowiadam, to nie jest bajka. To nie jest nic, tylko to jest ludzkie przeżycie. To, że jakoś przeżyłem, to nie wiem, to chyba jakiś cud był albo jakiś dar od Boga, że do tej pory ja żyję i mogę teraz dać to sprawozdanie, co się działo.
Anyone who's aware of our work will know we do a lot of work around interfaith. So the next speaker we've got is Fayaz Mughal, who works nationally around interfaith work, does a lot of work also around hate crime, and really about bringing communities together. And he's going to be sharing a story about the righteous Muslims, people from the Muslim community in World War II who helped and saved many Jewish lives. And then after Fayaz, well, I'm really pleased that we've got the Deputy Lord Lieutenant of Kent, Frank Martin, and who will also be doing a message on behalf of the Lord Lieutenant.
I've been involved in interfaith work for the last 20 years, primarily through Faith Matters, which is the organization, the vehicle by which it's done. And that interfaith work has involved mainly Abrahamic faiths, Christian, Jewish, and Muslim communities, but also we've done work with Hindu, Sikh communities, particularly around some of the issues on South Asian migration after the partition of India, Pakistan, and also around some of the issues of hate crimes affecting both communities and some of the tensions also in the subcontinent that affect these communities, diaspora communities here in the UK. Ez and I produced the booklet about 11 years ago, and that booklet was produced on the work that Yad Vashem had done to commemorate the righteous Muslims who saved Jews in the Holocaust. One of the stories, for example, is a man called Salahuddin Ulkuman, who was the Turkish consul on Rhodes. And when the German Wehrmacht took over Rhodes, these German islands, as part of the occupation of Greece, they were looking in the islands and trying to find and found Greek Jews, effectively, who were in those islands, as a view to sending them out to camps like Auschwitz and in the end murdering them. what Salahuddin Ulkman did was basically to try to save those Jews in those areas. He refused the extradition of those Jews from Rhodes and basically said that under Turkish law, all citizens were equal. So he cited Turkish law at that time, which was the old Ottoman law. So he was citing old Ottoman laws, which said under Turkish law, all citizens were equal. We don't differentiate between citizens who are Jewish, Christian, or Muslim. He was trying to use Turkish law to try to protect the lives of the Jews on Rhodes at that time. And he held his line, and he continued to hold his line because, in effect, he truly believed that those individuals were citizens who had the rights and defense of Ottoman law. And he also empathized with these Jewish communities because they were part of the history and heritage of the old Ottoman Empire. So for him, it was a real cordial relationship with the minorities within the Ottoman Empire at that time, and his view was that they needed defense as Turks. So that was his mindset. As Turks, as citizens of an Ottoman Turkey, they needed defense against the possible persecution. Now, people can agree or disagree on the politics, but the principle on the politics of Ottomans, whatever, Greek patriotism, you can agree or disagree, but you can't disagree on the fact that his motive to save their lives was a real positive motive. It was a motive to save their heritage, to save their lives as citizens. And so there was the potential of a diplomatic incident. And so the Germans effectively didn't push the line with that Jewish community. And so Ulkman effectively saved a group of Jews by holding the line and saying, you will not touch these individuals. We regard these people as part of our protected history and heritage. That is an important story, because it shows how this individual of Muslim heritage had saved Jews in that area. And it's important because it's a part of Turkish history, it's a part of Muslim history, it's a part of an individual doing the right thing, and it's something that British Muslim communities should also engage with because it's part of their history and heritage. In many instances, as co-religionists, this is inspirational, and it's a way of actually looking at the history of the Holocaust and learning more about it. It's a thing that is relevant to us over the ages. It makes us learn, it sensitizes us to the language of hate. It's really important. Apart from realizing what happened to the individuals, 6 million Jews were killed, gypsies were murdered, people who were different were murdered. The reality is we always need to keep that in the back of our head as we live as minorities, to enjoy Europe, to enjoy the United Kingdom and all the freedoms it brings, but just be aware of those who try to divide us. And the reality is we must never forget to challenge those individuals who try to cause that division in between human beings. On those who try to create division, whoever they are, at a communal level, at a regional level, at a national level, we must resist sometimes those who say division is the best place to live. And we must support those who say actually our common humanity means we need to care about each other.
Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to thank Govinda Sander of the Kent Equality Cohesion Council and Councillor Jeremy Kite, the leader of Dartford Borough Council, for their kind invitation to speak at today's event. Now, I'm joining you today as a Deputy Lieutenant of Kent, and I'm representing the Lord Lieutenant of Kent, the Lady Colgraine, who in turn is Her Majesty the Queen's representative in our county of Kent. And I'm humbled to be asked to speak at this Holocaust Memorial Day event. Kent is made up of a wide mosaic of communities, and in these very uncertain times, it's more important than ever that these communities continue to work together to support their members and also to reach out to support all communities of whatever background or faith. This Memorial Day event is a most timely reminder of the dangers of focusing on our differences rather than focusing on our common and individual strengths and the valuable experience and expertise we can all offer to each other. The world must never forget the appalling events of World War II and the unspeakable suffering endured by so many millions of innocent people. Sadly, even today, we're all aware that discrimination, victimization, violence, and genocide continue to be present in the world. And here today, we cannot, of course, seek to change that overnight, But what we can do is to ensure that we and the Kent communities we live in and the communities we lead and represent are ever vigilant in protecting the rights of every individual as equals, one to another, and community to community. On behalf of the Lord Lieutenant, I thank you for continuing to remember the pain of the Holocaust. This must never be forgotten.
I would like to thank you all for participating today. Thank you again to our partners, Dartford Borough Council. Thank you to all the speakers. It's really important, I think, that we continue to commemorate events like this alongside the other work we do, be it around St. George's Day, be it around Christmas, be it around Eid, Vaisakhi, Diwali. It's really important that, you know, we all come together as communities of Kent to remember the victims of the Holocaust. And I'll say numerous times, it's, you know, we're stronger together. And there's more that unites us than divides us. And hopefully some of the messaging that's come out today just kind of reinforces that. For those who need kind of, you know, want to know more about the Holocaust Memorial Day, there is an online event tonight from 7 o'clock. And at 8 o'clock, the Holocaust Memorial Trust are encouraging everyone to light a candle and just put it in the window. So, you know, there's other ways for maybe if you want to learn more or get involved in further activity. But from myself, from the Kent Equality Cohesion Council, Cohesion Plus and Dartford Borough Council, thank you very much. And please stay safe and hopefully you join us for future events. And we will be sending an evaluation, which is really helpful for us just to get some feedback. And just one final thing, I'm doing some work at the moment around a survey. We're doing online survey around COVID and people's you know, people from the local community who are interested in getting the vaccines done. So, you know, we will be sharing those questionnaires as well. If you can, please respond back to that. That'd be really helpful for us and our partners. So thank you very much and stay safe.